I'm going to go through how I made the fourth song on my EP, which is called Vignette. Since last submitting it to the blog, I've written and recorded vocals as well as recording a hardware synthesizer. So this is the vocal melody I wrote. The melody fits in the key, which is F minor. And on this one I tried to focus more on phrases and motifs than in my other ones, because my other melodies were quite straightforward. So this is the melody I wrote. So that's the vocal melody. The lyrics were reinterpreted from a poem I wrote about a year ago. And I recorded the vocals with a Warm Audio 47, as with all the other songs. So I'll go through how I mixed that. So first I'll take off all of the effects and show the raw take.
Just leave me to my own device.
First thing I did was pitch correction, just to make sure everything was completely on the note, with a tolerance of 6 cents and a response of 122 milliseconds. Then the next thing I did was I used an EQ. I cut off the low end to about 200 and then I did a cut at about 230 hertz, just to remove some of the boxiness of it. And then for some clarity I boosted around 5k. Then next thing I did was I compressed them to make sure they weren't very dynamic, and I used isotope neutron compressor for this, with the ratio at 4:0:1, the attack at 0 and the release at 17, and the threshold at 49.8 decibels where the vocals were coming in, and also added some gain and used the vintage setting just to add a bit of warmth to it. And then with that sounds like this.
Leave me to my own devices.
Next thing I added was a console EQ with the pop vocal preset, except I adjusted some of the settings and also added some drive. So I did a low cut at 272 Hz, 5.2 decibels of low gain, 3.8 decibels of mid gain, and 0.9 decibels of high gain, with the drive at 3.3, and that sounds like this.
Give me to my own devices.
Next thing was a de-esser, because there was some sibilance in that vocal take, which was around 5.8k. So that sounds like this.
Give me to my own devices.
And next thing I did was Valhalla Vintage Verb with the spacious vocal preset and the mix at 44.3, because I wanted to have quite a lot of reverb on this vocal take, and that sounds like this.
Give me to my own devices.
And then since the reverb washed it out a bit, I used fresh air just to bring it forward and then give it some presence. Put the high air at 39%. Altogether that vocal chain sounds like this.
Give me
chorus I copied the same vocal chain, except I used a ring shifter, and that sounds like this on its own. And I also boosted the mids and cut all the low end, just to kind of bring it forward. And I also added Chroma Verb, the Strange Room preset with the wet at 50%. And I also used an expander with the high expansion preset on there. And then I did this just to add some texture to the vocals on the chorus. So those two vocals together sounds like this.
The world is just a silhouette. I'm held captive in a vineyard, and I've got no candles to hold.
Then onto the lead sound, which sounds like this. This is the serum patch I used. As you can see, it uses this kind of warped sine wave and this regular sine wave, both with the unison at 7. The wavetable position moved to 57 on this one. Then the effects, I used delay, reverb, EQ and filter. The feedback at 14 on the delay, it's synced to the BPM. And the dry wet is at 22%. I used a hall reverb with the size at 75%, decay at 3.7, high cut at 35%, spin rate at 25, spin depth at 20, and the mix at 27%. And the EQ, I used 280 Hz, the Q at 45%, and the EQ volume at minus 2.5 decibels. Then the filter, use the reverb setting on the filter, with the cutoff at 3.7k hertz, resonance at 0, drive at 19%, no dampening, pan in the middle, and the dry wet at 28%. Then onto the mixing for this sound. I added a filter with the cutoff at 54 to make it kind of more in the background, and because there was a lot of high end. That's what that sounds like. Next thing I added was some reverb with the wet at 100% and the dry at 0, just to make it completely kind of washed out and in the background. And then EQ, all I did was some bracketing, just removing all the low and high end that I didn't need, and altogether that sounds like this. As you can hear, that's quite subtle. Then onto this ARP sound, which sounds like this. This is the serum patch for that. Again, uses the same sound as the lead, except I added a delay when I was mixing it. The 8th alternating pan preset on Logic's Delays Designer, and the mix is at minus 12 decibels. Then for the EQ, cut off all the low end that I didn't need. I did a slight cut here because there was a frequency that I didn't like, and also boosted the high end to make it cut through. then this kind of build-up synth is a Vital preset that I found on Preset Share. It was either from Preset Share or it might be a Vital stock preset. Don't remember where I found it. But for the EQ, I just bracketed again, removing everything that I didn't need. Then this one is a Serum preset that I found on Preset Share. Uses these spectral oscillators and this kind of weird LFO, and there's a lot of automation on it. And then again with that, also just did some bracketing. Then this bell sound is very basic. Has no oscillators, just a long LFO and the glass lid on the noise setting with the level all the way up. And this filter with the cutoff at 980 Hz. All I did was remove the low end, boost the mids where it sat, and also the high end to make it cut through. And then this is the main chord sound that I used in the song, which is from Alchemy Synth. It's called Dusty Record Synth, with the deep pad setting on that sound. And then over here is the hardware synth that I recorded. For the settings on that, I just copied this sound that I made in Serum. Which is just saw waves with some unison on. And also hyper, distortion, compressor and EQ. And I think I got pretty close in recreating that sound. This is what I got from that. And since the synth had a mono output, I recorded 2 takes with a Scarlett and just panned each one to give it a wider sound. And for the EQ on them, I just removed the low end and boosted 3K just to give it some clarity. And then added a filter with the cutoff at 60% just to make it more in the background. I also used Chroma Verb with the chamber preset with the wet at 35%. And then in context, these sound like this. And then this is the drone sound I used. Which I found from a Serum pack from Preset Share, which is where I find all of my presets. And it uses a spectral oscillator and this like long envelope and this LFO. It also has a lot of automation on all of these things. And this is the bass sound I used, which I've pretty much used on nearly all of my songs. It's just a saw wave with the octave on -2 and 16 unison. And it uses these effects. Uses a tube distortion on post with the drive at 40%, the mix at 100%. Chorus with the rate at 0.08 Hz. A delay of 5 milliseconds. The depth at 26 milliseconds. Feed at 10%. Filter at 1.8K. And the mix at 63%. The delay, I had feedback of 40%, sync to BPM, and as a mix of 30%. Also has a little bit of reverb on it. The Hall setting, the size at 35%, decay at 4.7 seconds, a high cut of 35%, spin rate of 25, spin depth of 20, mix at 20. And then it also has an EQ with a cut at 22 Hz just to remove some muddiness, and a boost at 22.7K with a 24 decibels there, and also has a filter on it with the cutoff at 2.8K, the mix at 100%. And for EQ on that, all I did was boost the high end just to give it some more fuzz from the distortion. Then the breakbeats I got from Sample Focus. This is the main one. This is the main breakbeat that goes through basically all of the song. The EQ on that, I just removed the low end to get rid of some muddiness. Got up to 100 Hz just to remove muddiness. Boosted slightly at 200. Added a cut here because there was a frequency in the snare I didn't like. And also cut the high end so that the hi-hat wasn't too prominent. And then on the chorus I layered that with this breakbeat, which is also from Sample Focus, and just did some bracketing on that, and those two together sound like this. And I also have this breakbeat which I used a ring modulator on. Sounds like that. And then with the ring modulator on it, sounds like this. And on the EQ I just cut off the low end and boosted the high end at about 7K. Then those three breakbeats together sound like this. And then this is just a riser from, I think it's from Logic's stock loops. It's just a reverse cymbal. So yeah, that's everything on Vignette and how I mixed it.